Bien. Bien, je pense que toutes les personnes qui doivent être là sont réunies. Donc, bonne journée, bonjour à tous. Bienvenue à la défense publique de doctorat de Quentin Deconinck. Donc, Quentin va nous faire une présentation de ses travaux en présence des membres de son jury qui sont présents dans la communication. Il y a le professeur Olivier Bonaventure, qui est son promoteur. Il y a le professeur Ramin Sadr de l'UCL, le professeur Benoît Donnet de l'Université de Liège, et moi-même, le professeur Charles Pêcheur, qui est l'honneur d'assurer la présidence du jury. Fait également partie du jury de Quentin, mais ne peut pas être présent ici, le professeur Costin Raitkiou, qui malheureusement n'a pas pu être avec nous pour la défense. Donc, Quentin va nous proposer un résumé de ses travaux de doctorat en une quarantaine de minutes.
Oui.
Suite à quoi les membres du jury vont lui poser leurs questions. Et ensuite, eh bien, les participants dans l'assistance, donc vous-même, tout un chacun, si vous voulez, vous aurez l'occasion également de lui poser vos questions. Pour le bon déroulement, je vous invite à couper vos communications, couper votre microphone et votre caméra, en tout cas pendant la durée de la présentation. En le remettant évidemment, si vous avez une question à poser à ce moment-là. Mais je crois que l'essentiel, à peu près tout le monde a déjà fait ça. Donc voilà, sans plus attendre, Quentin, on t'écoute, la parole est à toi.
Okay, so thank you everyone and welcome to my public thesis defense about flexible multipath transport protocol. So to better understand the goal of my thesis and the meaning of the title, let's understand the concept behind it. So let's start first explaining what are transport protocols. So let's take the example of you, a user that want to go to the internet and go fetch a web page. So the user will typically use its device, which be a client, so a smartphone, and get the page to a server serving the page. But the issue is that the client and the server are not directly connected each other, so there are a lot of devices between them. So there are the Wi-Fi and cellular access point, there are also routers, firewalls, and etc. And they are interconnected together to form the internet. And so the client and the server need a way to communicate, to establish a communication channel to go through this whole network. And this is the goal of the transport protocols that allows to create a communication between two devices, and then they can exchange packets that contain the data that they want to exchange over between the devices. And the most deployed transport protocol today is the transmission control protocol, which is TCP, which works as follows. So initially the client init a request to initiate a communication to the server by sending a SYN packet. Then the server confirm that acknowledge the beginning of the connection by sending a SYN-ACK. And finally, the client confirm the initiation of the connection by sending a third ACK. And this handshake, the SYN-ACK, allows a TCP connection to be bound to a 4-tuple, which is formed of the IP address and the port of the client, and the IP address and the port of the server. And then you can start exchanging some data over the connection. So for instance, here you can have the server that can start sending a piece of the image of the page that it wants to serve. And the client can then acknowledge the reception of the data by sending a package. So TCP provides a reliable byte stream service, which means that, for instance, if the receiver receives packets in the wrong order, such as the data is not received in the correct order, TCP ensures that the application will be able to reconstruct correctly the data, and so to reconstruct correctly the image here. And it's also handle loss and corruption events. So, for instance, if the receiver receives only part of the messages, so some parts are missing and other parts are corrupted, TCP ensures that the corrupted part will not be delivered to the application, and at some point the sender will retransmit the missing data, such as the receiver can have the whole data together. So currently we have TCP, which is the main situation, and now we have more and more smartphone devices, which are more and more multi-home, so you can connect to both Wi-Fi, both cellular. And let's take an example of a user which interacts with a server by listening music or by interacting with voice-activated application. And it's connected to Wi-Fi. At some point, he has to go to the trashes, and so he has to go out of his Wi-Fi reachability. What will happen? It will happen that the connection will be broken. Why? Because the IP address is specific to a network, so the IP address is specific to the Wi-Fi network. The cellular network has another IP address, which means that if the TCP connection is bound to a 4 tuple, you change the IP address, the connection is broken, and so the application is impacted. So you will notice that there is a connectivity issue, and so the application needs to handle that. And in the case of, for instance, if you are listening to radio music, you will experience a music stall. So that's why we introduced the concept of multipass transport protocol to use multiple paths. And the state of the art currently is multipass TCP, which is an extension of TCP, which takes advantage of the TCP option part of the TCP header. So how it works, you start initiating again a TCP connection as regular, but in addition you negotiate an additional TCP option which is called the MP capable, and this option negotiates the usage of multiple paths over the connection, and then you can start exchanging data over your connection as usual TCP. And then if you want to open a second path, you create another TCP connection but with a different TCP option, and this TCP option means that you want to attach this connection to the other one to form together a MPTCP connection on which you can spread your data across different networks. And so the usage of multiple paths have two main use cases. The first one is bandwidth aggregation, so you want to aggregate your bandwidth as much as possible because you want to decrease your download completion time, for instance, of large files. And the second one is, as we said, the network handover, where you can survive from the Wi-Fi to the cellular move, for instance. And implementing multipath at the transport layer has the main advantage that your application is left untouched, which means that your application can leverage the usage of multiple paths without modifying the application itself. So the usage of multiple paths introduces additional algorithms, and in particular the path manager. So the path manager answers the question of, you have multiple networks, and on which networks will you create the path? Will you create a multipath TCP path? The classical algorithm, which is used in MPTCP, is called the full mesh, and creates all paths between all the tuples of IP address between the client and the server. In that case, it creates directly the second path over the cellular interface. So now, and the second algorithm is the packet scheduler. So now you have multiple paths with possibly different characteristics, and you have to answer the question, on which path will you send the next packet? And each time you have to send a packet, you have to answer this question. So each host, when he wants to send a packet, needs to select on which path it will send. And the classical algorithm is the lowest latency first packet scheduler, which means that if it's possible, it will always prefer sending data over the lowest latency path. And an important point to note here is that all these algorithms are host specific. So the client selects its path manager, the client selects its packet scheduler, and the server selects its own packet scheduler, and these might be different. So you are not forced to use the same packet scheduler and the same path manager between all the hosts. So okay, we've seen multipath transport protocol. So why flexible multipath transport protocol? So as we said, we have multi-home devices with possibly Wi-Fi and cellular, and we have a huge variety of applications. So for instance, we have simple reliable file transfer where you just want to aggregate your bandwidth. You can have video streaming, possibly under mobile situation, where you want to have a good quality image without experiencing rebuffering, so you don't want your buffer and your your video to stall. And you have also interactive applications such as Siri or instant messaging, where you just want to have a very, very low latency. You don't want to have a high latency, you want to be very interactive. And the goal of this thesis is to adapt the multipass transport protocol to the server use case, and so to the different use case they might serve. And so the first contribution we made is, we know that multipass TCP works well for bandwidth aggregation, but what about on smartphone? And for that we perform MPTCP measurements, and we perform 2 measurement campaigns. The first one, which is on Android, which is based on the Linux implementation of the multipass TCP, and the second one on the iOS implementation with active measurements. So for the Android measurements, we perform passive measurement by deploying a SOX proxy, which allows all the MPTCP capable clients to use multipass TCP and to redirect then the traffic through the actual server, such as Facebook, Google, and so on. And so the users are using actual application, and we just redirect it to a multipass TCP connection. And we had about 12 users and 20 gigabytes of traffic that we collected, and we deployed the default algorithms of multipass TCP, which are the lowest latency first packet scheduler and the full mesh path manager, which are known to be bandwidth aggregation driven. And so our results are the following. So we notice that most of the connections are actually short, and if we consider those connections, we notice that actually only 1/3 of these connections actually are multipass. So it means that 2/3 of this connection that we collected does not have more than one pass. And there are several explanations for that. The first one is that because even if you have the ability to connect to cellular and Wi-Fi, sometimes some of the networks are not available, so sometimes you don't have the Wi-Fi. And also because the connections are short, sometimes you just don't have the time to create an additional pass, because as we have seen, creating paths takes some time. So okay, we have now a set of multipass connections, so let's focus on them. And the next question to answer is, how are the paths used? How the application use the path? And there we notice that only 1/4 of these connections actually use more than one path. So in only 1/4 of the connection, you establish a second subflow, a second path, and you start using it by sending data. And again, there are 2 factors that explain this. First, we have the full mesh path manager that creates as soon as possible additional paths. And we have applications that sometimes does not require bandwidth aggregation. So for instance, instant messaging, the network traffic is so low that you don't need bandwidth aggregation. You just want to keep connectivity. Nevertheless, we notice that in the case of a connection that use 2 paths, we notice that 1/4 of this connection we experience a data handover, which means that it's the situation where you have the device that starts being connected to, for instance, the Wi-Fi, and at some point it loses the Wi-Fi, but the connection survives and it continues sending data over another network. So we can say that network handover is probably the most selling point of multipass TCP on smartphone. And then we explore further this option by evaluating the iOS implementation and by performing active measurements through a multipass tester application that we designed and implemented, which perform double request response traffic pattern under mobile. So let's explain the request response pattern. So you create 2 connections, one upload connection and one download connection, and you perform request response traffic. So the client sends some data, the server will reply with some applicative acknowledgement, and you compute the delay between sending the data and getting the applicative acknowledgement. And for the download connection, it's the same. The server sends data, it receives applicative acknowledgement, and compute the delay it observes. And we evaluate it in mobile mode, which means that we force the user to be both connected to Wi-Fi and cellular, And then we run the test until the user has gone out of the Wi-Fi reachability. We detect that by running the test until the system detects the Wi-Fi as being lost. And in that test, we focus on the maximum application delay perceived on each flow, because this is probably where the user might notice some issue. And we have the following result, which is a cumulative distribution function. So each point of this curve corresponds to a test. And we show for each test the maximum application delay. And we notice that in the median case, so in 50% of the experiments, we observe a maximum application delay which is greater than 2.5 seconds. Which means that if you are using, for instance, Siri, it might be responsive for 2.5 seconds. Or if you are listening to music, it means that if you don't have a buffer of at least 2.5 seconds, you will have a buffer stall. You will have a music stall. And so even if you can survive the connection, you can have possible unresponsiveness at the application level. So our measurement confirmed that multipass CP works on smartphone, but most of the application does not require bandwidth. And furthermore, we have a network overhead due to the creation of unused subflows, and most of them are cellular subflows. And from the user point of view, typically the Wi-Fi and the cellular are not equal. You typically prefer using the Wi-Fi over the cellular because Wi-Fi is cheaper in terms of monetary and also in terms of energy consumption. And furthermore, we notice that even if you can survive the application, the interactivity of interactive application might be hurt. So the question we try to answer now is, can we find a good trade-off for interactive application to reach reasonable application delay while minimizing the cellular usage? And this is our second contribution, which is adapting multipass TCP to interactive application. And for that, we design a solution which is called Multimob. We consist in 3 elements. And the first element is a server-side packet scheduler. And to explain its motivation, let's take again the request-response traffic, where the client measures the delay between sending its request and receiving the response. And you have this situation where you have one path which has a lowest latency than the other, and both devices use the lowest latency first packet scheduler. So the client will prefer the lowest latency path, so it will send its request over the blue path. The server will receive it, and then the server has to reply with a response, and will send on the lowest latency path, the blue. So everything is nice, and then you experience a latency of 50 milliseconds. That's nice. So now what happens if at some point the lowest latency path becomes completely lossy? So for instance, you are getting out of Wi-Fi reachability, but your system has not detected it yet. So what happens? The client will first send a request over the blue path because it's not aware yet that the path has been lost. So it sends packet, the packet is lost, and because TCP is reliable and MPTCP is reliable, the sender will trigger a retransmission timeout and then retransmit the packet over the red path. And so the request will reach the server. That's nice. So now the server has to reply with a response. But the lowest latency path is still the blue one. And so the response will go over the blue path because it's still the lowest latency path and the server is not aware that the path has failed. So the packet will also be lost, will also experience a retransmission timeout, and then after some time you will retransmit the response over the red path and then continue using the red path, and we will experience a much higher latency of more than half a second because you experience RTO at both sides. And so to improve this situation, we make the observation that the client is directly connected to the wireless network. So it has a much better view of the wireless condition than the server, which is typically behind our router. So sometimes the server is not even aware that you're connected to Wi-Fi or cellular. So what if you let the server follow the decision made by the client? And this is the goal of our server scheduler, which follows the last client decisions. So let's take again our example where you have your request that is sent on the blue path. The packet is lost because at some point the client has to discover that the Wi-Fi is lossy. Then you retransmit over the red path. the server receive a packet over the red path and say, the last time the client used a path, it was the red one. So let's directly use the red one, and then you save a retransmission timeout at server side, and so you can have a much lower latency, typically twice lower than with the lowest RTT scheduler at both sides. So we have an adapted server-side scheduler, and we have two additional elements. So the first one is that we want to limit the creation of unused cellular paths. And for that, we include a new path manager, a break before make path manager, which delays the creation of the cellular path until the Wi-Fi is detected as being bad. And the detection of being bad is, I won't discuss it in this presentation, but we have a way to detect that Wi-Fi is bad. And then you want to create your path once your Wi-Fi is bad. But you have delayed the creation of your path, and it takes time to create path. And for that, we added another mechanism, which is called the fast join, which allows MPTCP to create a path and sending data at the same time. It's similar to TCP fast open, but at MPTCP level. And so we've evaluated Multimob with real users, and we distributed a few devices with a modified version of Android. And we run a serialized traffic when the device detects some motion, and we consider here the runs where Wi-Fi and LTE were available. And we noticed that in terms of interactivity, Multimob achieved quite similar results that the regular MPTCP modes, which are using full mesh path manager, while when we consider the runs where the Wi-Fi stay alive, so the Wi-Fi stay usable the whole time, we notice that Multimob prevents the creation of the cellular path, which means that you can save the energy, and so you can limit the unneeded cellular usage. So we achieve a trade-off between the interactivity and the usage of the cellular. So that's nice, but there are some limitations. The first one is that MPTCP is implemented in the kernel, in the Linux kernel. So you have to modify the Linux kernel to include your MPTCP change. And in Android, a kernel version is device specific and Android version specific, which means that we have a solution which only works on Nexus 5 devices, which are quite old now. And so we have a very limited evaluation set due to that. Second, we focus on a very specific use case, where we think that the user is concerned by the cellular usage. But what if the user has plenty of money and plenty of battery and just want to aggregate, or he just want to duplicate all the packets everywhere? In that case, it's likely that the server scheduler might not fit its requirements. Then Multimob is a tuning of MPTCP, which is TCP itself. And so you inherit all the issue of TCP. The first one is that if you want to extend, you have to rely on TCP option, but the TCP option space is quite scarce. You only have 40 bytes, and now, most of the time when you need to deploy an extension, we have to engineer a lot your bytes to fit inside of 40 bytes. So it's annoying. And furthermore, the TCP header is in clear text, which means that if you have new options, you might have a middle box such as firewall that may say, oh, it's a new TCP option, it might be an attack, so even I drop the packet or I drop the option, and so it prevents the deployment of new feature. So that's annoying. So let's say, okay, let's drop TCP, and let's take another protocol which is called QUIC. So why do we take QUIC? Because actually QUIC aims at replacing TCP and TLS at top UDP. So it provides reliable N encryption at top UDP. And actually QUIC is already there. If you use Chrome and you go on YouTube or Google services, actually you are using QUIC, not TCP. And in QUIC, you identify connection through connection IDs. And packets that go from the client to the server use a given connection ID, and packets going from the server to the client use another connection ID. And this usage of connection ID allows QUIC to not be bound to a 4 tuple, which means that you can survive a QUIC connection if you lose your Wi-Fi and you go over the cellular. And furthermore, QUIC provides zero RTT connection establishment where you can directly send data when you establish your connection, which is nice because with the fast join is already implemented in Quick by design. So a Quick packet looks like this. So we have a clear text header, a very small clear text header, which is visible by the middle boxes, and we have an encrypted payload, which form the big part of the Quick packet. And this encrypted payload allows actually easier deployment, because if you deploy new feature, these are encrypted, and so you don't have any middle box that annoys you with your extension. And so in the header, you have the destination connection ID that identify the connection. So your connection is not bound to a for tuple. You have a packet number that indicates in which order you have sent your packets. And then you have frames. And if we have to take an analogy, let's take that Quick packet is like a Docker ship. A Docker ship where your packet is the ship, and the Docker are frames. And frames are the core messages of the Quick protocol, and those frames are not bound to a given packet, so you can retransmit frames in different packets without having any issue. And so you have different type of frames. So you can have control frames such as acknowledgements, which indicate that you have received some packets, and you have also stream frames, which actually are the frames that carries the applicative data. And a feature of Quick is that it provides data multiplexing over a single connection. So you can have multiple byte streams, independent byte streams, over a single connection, and these are independent. So you can exchange several objects over a given connection, which is not possible in TCP without being independent. Objects in TCP are not independent. You have to follow an order. In Quick, we don't have the issue. So Quick is, as we said, a quite recent protocol. So the first prototype was made in 2012. Then in 2015, there were the first Google deployments. Then in 2016, we had the first specification of Quick. Then there were a few research papers. And then the specification work continue. And we hope that in July, we'll have the first official specification of Quick. But even during those 4 or 5 years of Quick work, Quick is still single pass. So you can survive a connection migration from Wi-Fi to cellular, but you cannot use Wi-Fi and cellular at the same time. So let's fix this, and let's design multipath extension for the Quick protocol. And actually, we made 2 versions of the multipath extension. The first one in 2017, and the most recent one, which is the current one, which is the one we will describe now. And this version we are currently proposing is the one which is considered for standardization of the multipath extension in the end of this year. So to understand how we can do multipath in Quick, let's see how we have single path now. So currently we have a connection path in Quick, which is form of both flow, of 2 flows. A flow of packets going from the client to the server using a given connection ID, and another flow of packets going from the server to the client using another connection ID. So you have one unidirectional flow or uniflow from the client to the server, and one from the server to the client. The multipath Quick, what if now we just say that we have a set of unidirectional flows going from the client to the server, and a set of unidirectional flows going from the server to the client. And this is multipath Quick. And each uniflow uses a different connection ID, such as each packet can be mapped to a given unidirectional flow. And so you have, if you take the unidirectional flow going from the client to the server, from the client point of view, it will be seen as a sending uniflow on which you can send packets. And from the server point of view, it will be seen as a receiving uniflow on which it can receive packets. And the sender selects on which for tuple it uses its sending uniflow, so it's the sender that selects on which network it will use send its data. So how can you negotiate the usage of multiple uniflow? Typically, during the handshake, you negotiate an option, a transport parameter, which is called match sending uniflow ID, which negotiate the multipath usage, but also indicate the number of maximum sending path you are ready to support. So in that case, the client is ready to support at most 2 paths, at most 2 sending Uniflows, and the server is ready to support at most 3 Uniflows. And then the creation of the Uniflow is triggered by the receiver, which sends a multipath new connection ID frame, which proposes a connection ID for a given Uniflow. So the receiver first opens its receiving Uniflow and propose it to its peer as sending Uniflow. And this process allows each host to keep control of the number of Uniflows, because during the handshake you control the maximum number of sending Uniflows to one. And as a receiver, you control the number of sending Uniflows of your peer, because if you don't send multipath new connection ID frame, you don't open receive Uniflows. And so you keep control of the number of Uniflows you have over your connection. So, as we said, multipath TCP and multipath QUIC are both multipath transport protocols, so they have both the same use case of bandwidth aggregation and network handover. So let's assess if at least multipath QUIC achieve bandwidth aggregation. For that, we download a large file on a 2-path network, and we run 9 times the experiment, and we take the median 1, and we compare with MPTCP and MPQuick, and we implement it MPQuick on top of an implementation based on QuickGo. And so if we consider a particular network here, which are quite similar round trip time and one path which has twice the bandwidth as the other, we notice that multipath TCP and multipath QUIC have exactly the same performance. That's nice. But can we make a generic assumption that we have the same performance for always between MPTCP or MPQuick, or is this observation biased by the fact that this is this particular network configuration where both protocols work well? So the idea is to explore a much broader scope of network configurations, and for that we rely on an experimental design approach. So we take the case where we have 2 paths, and then we explore a parameter space. So a parameter space of capacity of the link, of the round trip time of the link, and the router queuing delay of the link. We apply space filling algorithms to select points that cover as the best possible the parameter space with as few points as possible. And we consider all these run, and we look at the global trend between both protocols. And in our case, we explore 506 network configuration, and we compute the ratio between the download completion time of MPTCP and MPQuick, which means that if your ratio is greater than 1, it means that the download completion time of MPQuick is lower, so MPQuick is better. And in converse, if the ratio is lower than 1, it means that MPTCP is better. And we observe that over our parameter space, we notice that actually we have quite similar performance between MPTCP and MPQuick, because they tend to be, most of the points tend to be at 1. And actually, our previously selected scenario is one of the 506 points that constitute this curve. So we can assess here that in the parameter space we explore, we have quite, we can say that MPQuick can aggregate as good as MPTCP. So now what about network handover? So let's take again our example of request response traffic with by measuring the delay seen by the client, where the lowest latency path experience complete loss after some time, and where the server is still using the lowest latency path. So if we take the case of MPTCP, we know that we have the RTO at both client server side. We notice that MPQuick, actually, we can save the RTO at the server side also, even by using the lowest latency first packet scheduler. Why? Because, again, you send your data first on the lowest latency path. Because QUIC is nice, but it's not magic, the packet is lost. After some time, you retransmit the data over the other network path. But QUIC can define additional opaque data, here the Uniflow frame, which is encrypted, so you don't have any interference with the middle box, that indicate that your other path is lossy, and so you should avoid it. And so you can provide the information to the server that can be aware that the other path should be avoided, and you can directly reply over the red path, and so you can save the RTO at the server side. So that's nice. We demonstrate that QUIC is much more flexible than TCP because we have encrypted frames, and frames are not limited in size, unlike TCP options. And multipass TCP is nice, but we do not solve all the issue yet because we do not adapt the algorithm to the different applications yet. And when you want to deploy a new version of multipass QUIC, you have to deploy it at client or server side. So you have to deploy it quickly, remote devices. And to address this issue, we can take the analogy of web, where you have a static page in HTML. And if you want to improve the experience over this page, the server typically injects some JavaScript code that will be run over the client on the client to improve the experiment of the web page. So what about thinking about the same idea of carrying some bytecode to extend QUIC stacks on a per connection basis? And this is our fourth contribution, which is pluginizing the QUIC protocol. So the idea of pluginize QUIC is to revisit the structure of protocol implementation and to see a transport protocol as a set of basic functions which can be either modified or even added by a bytecode inserted by plugins. And so this injection of bytecode is dynamic on a per connection basis, such that on a given host, you can have different connections that use different algorithms, while you keep isolation between connections, so you don't have any interference between your connection over the same host. And to negotiate the exchange of plugins, it works as follows. So at the beginning of the QUIC connection, we leverage the transport protocol to indicate that you support some plugins. So here the client supports a multipass plugin. But here the server noticed that the performance of the client is somewhat strange and want to inject some monitoring plugin. But the monitoring plugin is not present at the client side yet. So okay, the connection starts and it works as follows. And at some point, the client might request the monitoring plugin. And there is a frame for that, the plugin request frame, which requests the monitoring plugin. And then the server can provide the monitoring plugin in a plugin frame, and which consists of the bytecode to be injected on the client. Such that in the subsequent connection, the client can then advertise its support for multipass and monitoring. The server can say, let's inject your monitoring. And then, okay, the client inject the monitoring code, and then the connection starts. And you can improve the performance or increase the services of your QUIC connection. In that case, we have the stat frame that was added by the monitoring plugin, and the stat frame is absolutely not present in the core implementation of the client. So it was completely added by the plugin. So that's nice. We show that we can extend the code with the implementation with bytecode. The question is now, where should we inject the bytecode? So where are the protocol functions? And for that, let's take the example of receiving a packet in QUIC. So you receive a packet, you have a header, and you have an encrypted payload. So at some point, you have to process the incoming packets. And then at some point, you have to process the header and each of the frames that constitute the packet, so the ACK and the stream. And when you receive an ACK frame, you can estimate the latency, and so you can estimate the retransmit timer. And so each of these protocol operations have its own built-in implementation, which is provided by the core. So what if now you want to modify the retransmission timer? Just attach the VM at the compute retransmit timer that override the behavior of your operation. And if you want not to process a new stat frame, you just add a new protocol operation that processes the stat frame and you provide its behavior through bytecode. And so in practice, if you want to change the retransmission timer, it will call a function at some point, and the body of the function implements the behavior of the protocol operation. If you want to change the behavior of the operation, we provide an anchor, which is called replace, such that if you want to replace the behavior of protocol operation, you can just attach a VM which overrides the behavior of the protocol operation. And so you can change the behavior of the connection through your bytecode. So now what about your monitoring use case where you just want to monitor the computation of the retransmission timer. So you don't want to modify the RTO computation, just want to monitor. And for that, we provide two additional anchors, which are called pre and post. So in pre, you can monitor the inputs of the protocol operation, and in post, you can monitor the output of the protocol operation. And because those are observer-only anchors, you can attach multiple VMs coming from different unrelated plugins, because those plugins are only read-only over the connection. So you can attach multiple plugins without any interference. So we have now our monitoring plugin. So we have inserted a plugin to write the stat frame, and we have a probe to see the value of the RTO. So now how can you communicate the value of the RTO to the writing of the stat frame? For that, we rely on a plugin memory, which is shared between all the bytecode that belongs to a same plugin. And if you have now another plugin, which provides unrelated features, it will have a completely distinct plugin memory, such that you don't have any interference between both plugins. So we implemented the Multipass Quick as a plugin, and we can identify two elements, two main parts of the plugin. The first one is the core part, the core functionalities which are always the same. And the other part is the modular algorithms, such as the path manager, the packet scheduler, where you can adapt the plugin to change slightly the path manager, the packet scheduler. So let's take again the example of the bound aggregation here with Multipass Quick and with plugin. Here, if we consider the case where both paths exhibit the same performance and the same characteristics, we can just apply a round-robin packet scheduler at both client and server, and observe if it can speed up the download completion time, and we notice that our plugin is able to perform as good as native implementation to make a speed up ratio of 2, which means that you can aggregate both links. And now if we want to consider again our case of request response traffic with network handover, here we can again provide different version of the packet scheduler. So we can provide at client side, insert a plugin with the round trip time packet scheduler. And at server side, we can provide a plugin with a server side packet scheduler and inject it over that connection, such that we can again have the RTO at both sides if we use the RTT scheduler at the server side. But if you use the server side packet scheduler at the server side with an adapted multipass plugin version, you can save the RTO at the scheduler, and so you can provide different versions of the plugin for different applications you want to have. And so, in conclusion, we made 4 major contributions. So we first perform multipass TCP measurement on smartphone and figure out that multipass TCP works, but we can improve its performance. So for that, we adapted multipass TCP to the interactive use case, in particular to limit the cellular usage. And we noticed that we had issue with TCP and deployment issue. And then we focus on the Quick protocol and make it multipass, and design multipass extension for the Quick protocol and work now for them being standardized. And then we go further in the adaptation of the algorithm by pluginizing the Quick protocol, such as we can have flexible multipass transport protocol to adapt the transport protocol to the application. And this thesis actually consists in a few publications, which are listed here. In addition, we made other works which are not directly related to this thesis, which are shown here. And finally, in our research, we strive at the reproducibility of our results. So we made the artifacts available. So everything about source code or measurement script and so on are publicly available at those URLs. And with that, I've finished my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Quentin, for this excellent presentation. We are now going to move to the questions from the members of the jury. I've seen that Professor Raissiu has joined with us during your presentation, so he's here in the end. Welcome, Costin. So I invite now the members of the jury to turn their microphone on so they can ask their questions, maybe turn their camera on as well, which I'm going to do too. And I will invite Professor Raissiou maybe to ask his questions first. Costin, are you with us? Well, I'm not sure if he's not, then I will.
He's here, but he's muted.
He's muted. Yeah. All right. Well, in any case, maybe we shall. I'll see whether we can connect with Costin later on. Maybe Professor Benoit, can you ask the questions, please?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna activate the cam. Okay, so now you can hear me and see me. So welcome to my home first. Second, so I have only 2 questions. The first one is in 2 parts, and the last one, I'm pretty sure, Quentin, you know it. So, first question, first part. According to you, and based on what you have observed in the wild with your measurements, with the work you have done throughout your thesis, what could be the future of multipath TCP? In the sense that would you expect some super large-scale deployment in the near future because it's super useful, or it's a kind of finally niche protocol that might not be that much deployed, or will be deployed for very, very particular use cases?
I think multipath TCP has still quite a lot of interest. It's not because multipath QUIC is there that multipath TCP is dead. Just because if you want to support it at server side, it's much more expensive to support multipath QUIC than multipath TCP, because QUIC is much more complex, you have encryption and so on. So in multipath TCP, the advantage of multipath TCP is that your application might benefit quickly from the multipath usage. So you don't have to make the application aware. If it uses TCP, it can use multipath TCP, so it can take advantage of that. So if you want to survive a connection, of course, multipath TCP, it's sufficient as it. Now, if you want to optimize it, probably you need some. It's slightly more complex. You need to finely tune MPTCP. It's probably a little more complex than multipath QUIC. So I think QUIC is multipath TCP will still work in the case where you want to bandwidth aggregate with with links which are quite good. So if you have high-speed links with low delay, high bandwidth, and you want to aggregate with multipath TCP, probably you can achieve good results. If you have very specific use case where you control your whole environment, I think MPTCP is still suitable too. Probably in terms of performance, because MPTCP you might still have better results in terms of throughput. Now, if you want to have complex application with complex application requirements, multipath QUIC is sure provides much more flexibility about that. So I think both are still alive, but in their field.
Okay, so you partially answered the second part of the first question, which would be what could be the future of QUIC. So would you expect a large-scale deployment of QUIC given all of its advantages? And which one, the IETF QUIC or the Google QUIC? And which one as is your preferred one?
Clearly, the IETF QUIC. It will be that one that will be deployed, because QUIC aims at being able to be used in the data center, plus all the issue of the privacy with the pervasive monitoring revelations. so which Google Quick is not does not work well for those use cases. So IETF Quick will be the one, and there are quite a lot of implementation about that. I think Quick will gain in popularity, especially for everything about web services. So if everything you go with your browser and so on, I think Quick will raise popularity, especially in the large companies. The issue we have with Quick is that if you're a small company, the issue of Quick is that it's much more difficult to mitigate DDoS attacks compared to TCP and multipass TCP. And just for that, I think some companies not sure they want to. They will be able to support Quick at server side just because you require quite a lot of server infrastructure just to handle connection, a lot of connection that might arise from anywhere.
Okay, so in the context or possibilities of a large-scale deployment of Quick, what would be your advice to operators, to industrials, to end users, I mean to the whole internet ecosystem with respect to Quick and its deployment?
I would say that don't move all your business over Quick Server now. Wait for some experience for especially the mitigation, because I think we need some experience on mitigating attacks with Quick. I think you can still use a TCP. It's nice, but no, if you want to shift a part of your business over Quick, why not? And probably the user might leverage it because Quick is better for, in the case of lossy environment and so on. So you might still have interest in some case, especially for the smartphone use case. I think Quick is might be more useful than TCP in the wireless environment.
Okay, so last question. Okay. You are about to graduate as philosophy doctor. If I'm not wrong, in philosophy doctor there is the philosophy aspect. So what was your philosophy during the last years, during your thesis? What's the philosophy in your thesis?
Yeah,
you were expecting that question, right?
Yeah, but I can say it again. Clearly, getting simple design, getting simple solution is complex. It's difficult to have something which is not a gas plant, and it requires quite a lot of work and knowledge, and to have a simple solution and to appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Quentin. So I'm done, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Professor Donnet. Professor Sabre, Ramin, do you have questions?
Yes, hello. Thanks again for this nice presentation, Quentin. One question, you just mentioned this DDoS attacks, right?
Yeah.
What is the state of defending against this kind of attacks? Do Akamai or Cloudflare, do they support Quick?
Akamai, Cloudflare, Google, Facebook, they all support Quick, but I think I'm not sure they have made a lot of publicly available information about the deployment of Quick of their server.
Oh, but maybe my question was maybe wrongly posed. I meant Akamai and Cloudflare in their DOS protection services. Do they support clients using Quick?
That's an excellent question. I don't know, but I suppose. I suppose. I'm not sure, but I have not tried. I don't know.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Another question was, let me see, which ones Benoit already asked. Yeah. So, what is the current status of quick extensions for multipass? Right. I saw that you wrote an internet draft.
Yeah.
And about pluginized quick. So, can you explain a bit what's the let's say the reaction of the community is, and whether there are plans to standardize things and so on?
For the pluginized solution.
For the quick extensions, for the multipass extensions, and then the pluginized.
Okay. So for the quick extension in general, there are a few quick extensions which are currently discussed, which are, for instance, the datagram extension, which allows sending data unreliably over a quick connection, because Quick provides reliable byte stream. So you can provide unreliable byte stream, such as doing a VPN with some encryption. You can do that with that extension. So we have a few other extensions that I will come to them later, because they are interesting. For the multipass extension, we presented at the interim of the IETF in early February. So the core concept of multipass, they all agree about that. The issue is that what they fear is the multipass algorithm part, because if you use multiple paths, you open a new dimension for new funny issues. So this part is the annoying one, but from some industries, we know that for some specific application they plan to deploy multipass quick, but the multipass quick will be for a specific application. And for the pluginized stuff, so I actually the issue of pluginized quick is that companies like having full control about their implementation. And the idea of having some code that can be provided by a third party that run on all your implementation, some companies does not like it at all. So yeah, we'll see. But I think we can move on this work about the pluginized stuff, especially for the specification. And I think it's possible to have much cleaner implementation with pluginized quick. And just to come back to another extension, currently there is an extension which is proposed, which is about adding a frame to change the ACK frequency. So the issue of Quick is that the ACK frames are quite large and requires quite a lot of processing at both server and client sides. So the idea is to control the rate at which you will send your acknowledgements, and they want to make a frame for that. And they are arguing a lot about what are the fields you should put and so on. While with pluginized Quick, it would just be a piece of bytecode that could say, okay, just put this as frequency, that's it. And if we manage to convince people that our pluginized quick solution might solve this kind of issue and prevent the creation of a lot of frames or extensions that actually are very specific to a narrow use case, I think it's a way we can promote pluginized quick here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't think we have any connection with the Costin Raitiu yet. So, Professor Bonaventure, Olivier, do you have questions?
Well, so thank you, Quentin, for the nice presentation. I've asked questions for the last 5 years, so I guess I've asked already enough questions to you.
All right. Thank you. So now, do we have questions from the audience? If anyone wants to ask a question, this would be the time. Turn on your microphone if you want to do so. All right. No questions. Okay, well then it remains for me to thank you again, Quentin. The jury is now going to retire for deliberation. So for the members of the jury, I have set up a separate team, right? I sent you the reference for that this morning. So we should all join up there. And for the rest of the audience, please remain on this connection, and we'll be back in a couple minutes for the final proclamation. Thank you again, and let's move to the other rooms for the members of the jury. Bien. Nous sommes de retour. Je relance l'enregistrement, mais l'enregistrement est repris. Est-ce que j'attends que tous mes collègues soient revenus? Olivier est là. Benoît est là. Et Ramin est là. Nous sommes donc à nouveau tous présents. Bien, donc je vais maintenant vous donner lecture, comme à l'habitude, de la proclamation officielle. Le temps que je m'en pars. Yeah. So I'm going to read now the official proclamation. I don't know if anyone English speaking is still in the audience, but in any case, the proclamation itself is in French. So I'm going to read that in French. Bien. La commission doctorale des domaines sciences de l'ingénieur et technologie et art de bâtir et urbanisme de l'Université catholique de Louvain a constaté le 1er décembre 2015 que M. Quentin de Koning, né à Sambreville, le 4 avril 1993, est titulaire d'un diplôme master ingénieur civil en informatique délivré par l'Université catholique de Louvain en l'année académique 2014-2015, remplissait les conditions d'admission au doctorat en sciences de l'ingénieur et technologie. Autorisé à s'y inscrire, il a effectué, sous la direction du professeur Bonaventure, un travail portant sur Flexible Multipath Transport Protocols. Le comité d'accompagnement ayant signifié que les travaux de recherche étaient achevés, le recteur a, sur proposition de la commission doctorale des domaines, constitué en date du 5 février 2020 le jury comme suit: le professeur Olivier Bonaventure, le professeur Charles Pêcheur, le professeur Ramin Sadr, le professeur Benoît Donnet et le professeur Costin Raïsiou. Charles Pêcheur en assure la présidence et M. Ramin Sadr en assure le secrétariat. Ayant procédé à l'examen préliminaire du projet de dissertation du candidat, le jury l'a déclaré recevable. Le jury se réunit le 30 mars 2020 pour la soutenance publique. Tous les membres sont présents à l'exception de Costin Raïsiou. Le jury se réunit pour délibérer après avoir entendu la présentation et la défense publique de la dissertation originale. Il décide que le candidat réussit l'épreuve et confère à M. Quentin de Koning le grade académique de docteur en sciences de l'ingénieur et technologie pour sa thèse Flexible Multipath Transport Protocols. Félicitations, Quentin.
Merci. Merci.
Voilà, toutes nos félicitations à nouveau. Est-ce que tu souhaites peut-être adresser un mot?
Je peux adresser quelques mots. Hein. Donc, tout d'abord, merci déjà à tous d'être venus assister à ma défense publique dans la situation actuelle. Hein. Voilà. Au niveau de la thèse, tout d'abord, la première personne qu'il faut remercier, je crois, c'est Olivier, parce que si Olivier n'avait pas été là, s'il ne m'avait pas proposé un mémoire intéressant, je crois que je ne sais pas si je serais ici actuellement. Donc, je remercie beaucoup Olivier, et surtout en plus avec tout le fait qu'il est très présent durant sa recherche, dans notre recherche. Il nous propose beaucoup de trucs et enfin voilà, je suis très content d'avoir eu Olivier donc, en tant que promoteur. Donc voilà, c'est la première personne à remercier. J'ai peut-être d'autres personnes aussi à remercier rapidement. Dans un premier temps, si Mathieu il est toujours là, Mathieu Barthes qui quand même a fait son mémoire avec moi, et donc si j'ai fait un doctorat, c'est peut-être aussi parce que il a été un bon commémorant. Donc merci à lui. Merci aussi à tous les membres de l'INL, hein, courants et anciens, donc tous les courants plus les anciens, Olivier, David, Benjamin, Fabien, et tous ceux que j'oublie, et tous les courants, donc Maxime, Thomas, Mathieu, François et Florentin. Et Wang aussi. Sinon, aussi merci à tout le département Ingi, surtout pour les longues belotes qu'on a pu faire. C'est très chouette. J'espère qu'on va continuer à faire des belotes une fois qu'on pourra se revoir en présentiel. Et même s'ils sont pas là, je remercie quand même ma famille, globalement pour son soutien, et plus particulièrement aussi à Lise, qui a dû me supporter tout ce temps, et que visiblement j'ai inspiré à faire un doctorat. Donc voilà, j'espère que ça se passera bien pour elle aussi. Et voilà, je crois que c'est plus ou moins tout ce que j'avais à dire.
Merci à toi. Est-ce que peut-être le promoteur, Olivier, tu veux ajouter un mot?
Oui, peut-être je voudrais aussi remercier Quentin. Ça fait maintenant presque 4 ans et demi que tu fais de la recherche dans le labo. Et je pense que ta thèse, ça marque quasi la fin de ce qu'on avait fait comme recherche sur Multipass TCP. Il y a eu pas mal de doctorants qui ont travaillé sur le développement, l'amélioration de Multipass TCP. Et je pense que tu es quasi le dernier à avoir travaillé sur ce sujet-là. Mais tu es aussi celui qui a amené Multipass à Quick. Et ça a déjà de l'impact au niveau de l'IETF, puisqu'on s'attend à ce que ta solution soit celle qui servira de base pour faire l'extension Multipass à Quick. Et puis, je pense que surtout, à la fin de ta thèse, c'est toi qui as été le leader pour tout ce qui est la possibilité de rajouter des plugins eBPF à des protocoles réseau. Et dans ta thèse, tu l'as montré à Quick, mais avec Thomas, on l'a fait pour BGP, on l'a fait pour SPF avec Cyril, on est en train de le faire pour TLS, il y a d'autres protocoles qui vont profiter de ça. Et donc, je pense que ta thèse marque le basculement de l'équipe entre Multipass et les protocoles plugins. Alors, à côté de ça, à côté de ton implication au niveau recherche, tu as été aussi fort impliqué au niveau de l'enseignement, avec beaucoup de contributions dans les cours de système, le projet 3 cette année, dans les cours de réseau. Et je pense que les étudiants aussi apprécient beaucoup de pouvoir interagir avec toi, et tous les supports techniques et tous les exercices que tu as développés pour les étudiants. Je pense que c'est une contribution aussi importante pour l'UCL et pour le département. Et donc pour tout ça, je voudrais te remercier.
Merci beaucoup. Eh bien, il me reste à aussi remercier tout le monde pour cette présentation, pour cet événement. Et voilà, et je vous dis à bientôt. Et on va conclure ici cette défense. Merci à tous. Merci. Et une bonne journée.